I used to think the world ran on luck. Luck for the kids born into money. Luck for the ones who didn't wake up to sirens and thin walls and the sound of neighbors arguing about bills. Luck for whoever got the golden ticket while the rest of us stared through the glass. Then the letter came. A bland white envelope, no return address, my name spelled right for once. Inside, 3 sentences, blocky type, no greeting, no sign-off. You didn't deserve what happened. You deserved better than the lies. If you want the truth, be at Pier 19, midnight Wednesday. I read it twice, then a third time, my heartbeat doing that hollow drum in my throat, because there was only one set of lies that could claw their way through 5 years and still scrape bone. My brother's death was an accident. That's what they said. Wrong place, wrong time. He was tired. He slipped. Case closed. But I knew the street where he lost his breath, knew the night wind, knew the text he sent me an hour before he was gone. Found something big. Might be the break. If this works, we're out. We never got out. He got a funeral. I got a hole. Midnight Wednesday, I worked a shift I couldn't afford to lose and pretended not to watch the clock. The manager's eyes crawled over me like roaches. He said I looked distracted. I said I was fine. I wasn't. On my break, I stood behind the dumpster and practiced breathing like the podcast said. 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. It made my fingers tingle. It didn't make time move faster. By 11:47, I was in a ride share I couldn't afford, telling a stranger to drop me where the docks go quiet. He turned down the radio and said that this part of town gets weird at night. I said, so do I. He didn't laugh. The pier smelled like salt and rust and promises that never get kept. A single lamp threw a cone of light like a tiny stage play. My sneakers stuck to planks that had seen more spilled beer than seawater. He was there already. Hoodie. Cap pulled low. Hands in pockets like he had all the warmth he needed. When he spoke, his voice was clean. No accent. No nerves. Like he practiced talking to microphones. You came alone, he said. I'm broke, I said. That's how a loan works. He smiled like he wanted to be impressed but didn't have the budget. I'm not here to scare you, he said. I'm here to show you something, but I need to know if you actually want to see it. Truth hurts more than lies. It cuts deeper, and it doesn't stop bleeding when you go home. Show me, I said, because pain had become the only thing that felt honest. He pulled out his phone, tapped, and held it up. The screen lit his face from below, carving hard shadows into the angles. A video. Grainy, like it had been saved in resent too many times. The camera looked down a narrow hallway, a door, an office nameplate, a timestamp in the corner. I knew the building. Everyone in our neighborhood did. City contracts, business grants. The place people went when they wanted to climb out of the hole and found the ladder was greased. The door opened. A man stepped out. Sharp suit, sharp haircut, sharp smile. I knew that face from billboards and ribbon cuttings. Mr. Clean Hands, the promise in a suit. Behind him, my brother. I stopped breathing. My brother's jaw was set, that stubborn tilt he used to get when we argued about who took the last slice. He slid a folder under his jacket. The suited man turned, almost caught him, almost spoke, but his phone rang. He looked down, distracted. My brother slipped away. The video jumped. A stairwell camera. My brother taking the stairs 2 at a time, then another door. A security guard. Words I couldn't hear. My brother's shoulders tightening. The guard's hand twitching toward his belt. Pause. The man lowered the phone. He didn't fall, he said. He was chased. He was forced. The wind stung my eyes. I told myself it was the wind. Why show me this, I said. It came out smaller than I wanted. Because you won't sell it, he said. Because you don't have a price. Because you will do the one thing nobody in that building believes in. What's that? Change, he said. Not theirs. Yours. He slid a thumb drive into my palm. It was warm from his pocket, human warm, like a heartbeat. Not just the video, he said, emails, bank transfers, a training manual they don't want anyone to see. Read it, learn it, and when you're ready, you'll make them play a new game. I don't know how to do any of that. You do, he said. You just don't know that you do yet. Why me? Because grief, he said, soft now, is a terrible coach, but a perfect drill sergeant. It strips you, it rebuilds you, if you let it. He stepped back into the dark. 2 rules, he called over his shoulder. Never beg for fairness, and never let rage drive. Buckle it in the back seat, make it your fuel, but you steer. Then he was gone, and the pier felt bigger, and the night felt like it had just started. At home, my apartment greeted me the way it always did. Dim. Too quiet. A thin coat of dust that made every surface look tired. I boiled water for ramen I wasn't hungry for and loaded the drive. The folder structure looked like a mind map of corruption. Departments nested inside departments until my eyes blurred. I clicked the training manual first. A PDF. Corporate fonts. Diagrams pretending to be empathy. Behavioral architecture, the title said. A framework for outcome optimization. I didn't have a degree in anything but hard days, but I could read, and the manual said everything if you listen past the keywords. Reward loops, scarcity triggers, choice overload, segment by pain point, nudge compliance, limit exit pathways. This wasn't a grant program. This was a maze. I thought of my brother's texts, the late nights, his excited voice about finding the pattern. He found it all right, and they found him. I printed pages I couldn't afford to print and taped them to my wall. I drew lines with a dull pencil. I circled words until the circles looked like bruises. Then I did something I hadn't done since I was a kid, and the power got cut off and we turned it into a game. I set a timer for 15 minutes, not to rush, to focus. The podcast called it a sprint. My sprint was a crawl, but it was forward. First sprint, learn the terms. Second, map them to the real world. Third, find where the design cracked. Somewhere around sunrise, I realized I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was building a weapon that wouldn't fit in anyone's hand. I was rewiring my own. Because the manual said something it didn't mean to say. Under all the jargon and the polished diagrams, there was a confession. People can be steered, yes, but steered how? By attention, by emotion, by story. If story was the steering wheel, I could build a car. The day shift at the diner came like a slap. Grease pop, coffee steam, regulars who tipped in nickels and trauma. I moved on autopilot and saved my attention like cash tips in a shoe. When my manager asked why I looked wired, I said I was studying. He laughed like that was a punchline. On my break, I recorded a voice memo, the kind nobody would ever hear. I talked to my brother the way I used to when he'd pretend he wasn't scared. I told him I found his breadcrumbs and I was following them. I told him I didn't know if I was strong enough. I told him I was going to try anyway. That night, I built a fake application on the city website. I used everything the manual loved. I clicked the wrong boxes on purpose. I waited to see where the funnel tried to push me. When the error messages popped up, they weren't mistakes. They were instructions. Try again. Almost there. Just one more document. The maze rewarded persistence and punished clarity. Somewhere, someone believed that if you kept people busy enough, they'd forget to be angry. I didn't forget. I made a list. It was ugly, not noble. I wrote names. The suit, the guard, a consultant with a bio full of buzzwords, a deputy director who smiled too easily at cameras and not at people. I wasn't going to hurt them. That would make me like them. I was going to make them visible. I was going to make them answer. But first, I had to become someone they couldn't swat away with a press release. So I started small. I cleaned my apartment. I know how that sounds, but nothing changes in a dirty room. I bagged the trash. I opened the windows to the cold. I bleached the sink. I made my bed like it owed me money. Then I stood in the doorway and looked at the square of my life, and felt the emptiness like a clean slate. I made a rule, bed made, every morning. Run, even if it's to the end of the block and back. Read 20 pages before scrolling. Write 10 sentences before speaking. Eat real food at least once. I didn't become a different person. I became a person who could stand the heat of the one I needed to be. I called my mother. She said my voice sounded strong. I told her I was fine. She said to visit soon. I said I would. We both knew soon could stretch into never. I promised anyway. The next night I went back to the pier, not for him, for me, to tell the dark that I wasn't scared of it anymore. The water sloshed against the poles. Somewhere a ship horn moaned, low and lonely. I let the wind numb my teeth and I said out loud to the waves, to my brother, to the thing inside me that had slept too long, I'm not asking for justice. I'm making it. Then I went home and rewired another piece of the maze. This time I circled the appeal process. I printed the rules. I highlighted the quiet parts. The deadlines that weren't advertised, the addresses that weren't listed, the email inboxes that never replied unless the sender was copy-pasted from a councilman's staff. Every rigged system is a stack of habits. If I could change mine, I could crack theirs. I started posting. Not the full story, not yet. Small things, short clips. How to survive a broken grant portal. How they make you quit without saying no. Why your incomplete application is exactly what they planned. Plain words, tight voiceovers, dark footage of late-night screens and humming fluorescent lights. People found it, not millions, dozens, then hundreds. They commented with stories that sounded like mine. They said my brother's name without knowing him. They DM'd screenshots and forwarded emails and sent me the pieces I didn't have. I posted at the same time every night. Ritual. The algorithm likes consistency, so does courage. Then in my inbox, a message with no subject line, no body, only an attachment. A photo of a page from the manual I'd been reading, but not the parts I had. The header said, escalation containment. There it was in black and white. If a claimant becomes loud on social media, funnel them to the Community Partner Program. Assign a coach, assign homework, assign hoop after hoop until the heat dies. They weren't scared of anger. They were scared of focus. I printed the page and taped it to the wall where I brushed my teeth. I wanted it to stare me down every morning. I wanted to feel the insult in my molars. The suit on the billboard posted a video about opportunity. The comments were turned off. I screen recorded it and stitched my voice over his smile. If you can't handle questions, I said, you don't deserve answers. It wasn't poetry. It didn't need to be. It needed to be a hammer. Another message. A voice note, distorted, maybe on purpose. You're making noise in the wrong places, it said. Make it in the right one. City Hall. Thursday. Public comment. 2 minutes. Make every second count. Public comment. The part of the meeting where they let the city breathe and then hold its breath again. I didn't have a suit. I had clean jeans and a black hoodie with a stain only I would notice. I printed my 2 minutes and practiced them until the words felt like bones in my mouth. Thursday, the chambers smelled like old wood and dusted off power. People in ties texted in their laps. The clock over the dais ticked too loud. Names were called. People asked for potholes to be filled and parks to be fixed and for someone's nephew to get a job. Then my name and the mic. And the light that means you're being watched. I didn't read my paper. I told a story, a boy who loved bad jokes and good music, a folder tucked under a jacket, a chase, a stairwell, a city that tells you to climb while it greases every rung. I didn't accuse, I described. I put the manual's words into human ones. I asked 3 questions, all answerable, none easy. I thanked them for their time like the script says. I walked away before the red light flashed. Outside, on the steps, a reporter with tired eyes and a fire I recognized asked me to repeat the questions. I did, slower. She clicked her pen like punctuation and asked for the documents. I said I could share summaries. She asked why not the originals. I said, because I'm not making it easy for the people who already made it hard. That night, the video of my 2 minutes spun faster than anything I'd posted. It wasn't viral, it was precise. It found the right people. A lawyer messaged me, a clerk messaged me from a burner. Someone from the mayor's old campaign liked it from a locked account. Then the knock. Midnight again, like the day had decided that was my hour. Through the peephole, hoodie, cap, the pier man. I opened the door. He looked at the wall, the prints, the strings, the map of a machine torn open. He nodded once like a teacher who didn't waste words. You didn't beg, he said. No, I said. You didn't rage, he said. I raged, I said. I just didn't hand it the keys. He smiled, quick and real this time. Good, because it's going to get uglier. I figured, I said. He pulled something from his pocket, a key card, laminated, with a logo I knew too well. Tomorrow's maintenance window, he said, 3rd floor, archive room. The manual isn't the only thing they hide. He placed the card on my table like a bet. You sure about this? I asked. Sure is a luxury, he said. We use resolve. He started for the door, then paused. When you walk in there, they will try to make you feel small. Remember the trick. What trick? Attention, he said. Decide where yours goes before they decide for you. When the door clicked shut, the room felt like it had grown. Or maybe I had. I stared at the card. I thought of alarms and guards and cameras that watched and didn't see. I thought of my brother's lopsided grin and the way he'd kick my sneaker when I got too serious. I thought of the page taped above my bathroom sink. Escalation containment. I wasn't the escalation. I was the fault line. The city slept like it always does, restlessly, pretending it wasn't dreaming of money. I lay on my too thin mattress and watched the ceiling and listened to the radiator gossip with the pipes. Somewhere, a neighbor's TV played a laugh track for a joke nobody told. I closed my eyes and took 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out, and pictured the 3rd floor, the door, the smell of paper and dust, the way secrets love to sit on shelves and call themselves boring. I didn't pray. I made a promise. I will not let them keep us lost in their labyrinth. I will make a map. I will walk it first, and if the door doesn't open, I will learn the lock. The building looked less like a place and more like a pose. Polished stone, mirrored glass, the sort of architecture that says, quiet down, we already decided. The logo over the revolving doors glowed soft and righteous, like a halo no one deserved. I wore the janitor's jacket I bought from a thrift store and a ball cap with a team I didn't care about. The key card in my pocket felt like a second heartbeat. I kept my eyes on the ground, shoulders rounded, chin tucked, a shape people ignore because they've practiced. Night staff drifted through the lobby like sleepy fish. Security sat behind the desk with a monitor-warmed face, scrolling his phone with a thumb that looked bored to death. A woman in heels clicked past me and left a vapor trail of citrus money. I pushed the service door with the confidence of someone who belongs, because belonging is 90% posture. The hallway hummed with the low, constant breath of rich buildings. I counted steps the way I'd practiced running to the end of the block and back, left at the vending machines. Right at the frame photo of the mayor shaking the director's hand, both of them smiling like they'd just solved hunger, and not a single press aide had written a word. 3rd floor. I swiped. A green light blinked like a tired yes. The lock chirped. The door opened. Paper has a smell. Even when it's clean, even when it's stored behind climate control and gentle signage, it smells like time made heavy. The archive room stretched long and narrow, rows of shelves stacked with boxes labeled in the neat handwriting of someone who cared about straight lines more than truth. I pulled on thin gloves, not to keep fingerprints off, to remind myself, touch less, see more. There were maps of the labyrinth, not literal, memos, draft rules, pilot program reports with the pilot faded, but the teeth still sharp. I took photos where I could, wrote page numbers where I couldn't. I found a binder marked Community Partner Program Success Narratives. The stories were neat as brochures: a veteran who found housing, a single mom who finished training and re-entered the workforce, a teenager who avoided negative peer influence. I traced the footnotes because footnotes don't know how to lie with the same confidence as headlines. A code in the margins popped up again and again: 2M scar, 4C loss, 1A debt. The manual segmentation rubric dressed in small print. Not people. Categories. Pain profiles assigned to a grid. I felt my teeth grind before I stopped them. Rage buckled in the back seat. I kept my hands on the wheel. I moved faster. There was a clock in my head, steady, backstage. I reached the last aisle and found the drawer the peer man had probably wanted me to find but didn't name. Like a riddle he needed me to solve to know I was ready. It wasn't locked. That scared me more than a padlock would have. Inside, slim black folders with no labels on the spine. Anonymous history. I pulled one. Invoices, not for services, for outcomes. A contractor billed the city not for hours worked, but for compliance conversions. A bonus line for deterrent optimization, people who self-selected out before the second appointment. The number glowed cold. Rewarded for the ones who disappeared. My brother's face flashed in my head, jaw set, folder under his jacket, the moment before the guard's hand twitched. I put the folder back and took 3 deep breaths, not the 4-7-8 because the room felt too narrow to hold it. On the 4th breath, I heard a cart squeak 3 aisles down, not mine. I slid the drawer shut and stepped into the shadow between stacks, heart pounding so loud the boxes could hear it. A light came on with a sleepy fluorescent flicker, and the room took on that ugly ghost blue you can taste on your tongue. "Hello?" a voice said. Not security. Custodian. Tired, older, with a wheeze at the edges. I stepped out. He saw the jacket. His shoulders softened. "Thought I was alone," he said, pushing the cart with a mop and a bucket that had seen more years than me. "They never tell me when they change the schedule." "They didn't," I said. "I changed mine." He laughed under his breath. Good answer." He looked at me, really looked. Not suspicious, just curious in that human way you can't scrub out with policy. "You knew?" "Filling in," I said. "How you like it?" "It's clean work," I said, and we both smiled at the lie. He nodded at the shelves. "You'd think something important lives here," he said, "but the only thing I ever see is dust." "Dust is honest," I said. He thought about that like it might be the smartest thing he'd heard in days. "You take care," he said, and pushed his cart on, the wheel on the left squealing like it needed forgiveness. When the squeal disappeared down the hall, I checked my watch. 12 minutes. Too long. I snapped 3 last. Photos. Invoice totals. Contractor names. The bonus clause. Then slid my phone away and smoothed the gloves on my fingers like putting a promise back in place. On the way out, a different security guard stood at the stairwell door talking into his shoulder mic. Big guy, beard like a warning. He put up a palm. "Hold up." I stopped. My pulse tried to climb out of my throat. "You running the buffer machines tomorrow?" he said, and I realized he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the badge that wasn't clipped to my jacket because I didn't have one. His eyes flicked, caught the empty spot, flicked back to my face. I didn't blink. "Night shift, yeah," I said. "Maintenance window." He exhaled like all questions are a kind of boredom. "Make sure you put down cones this time. Last week we had a slip, paperwork all weekend." "Wouldn't want that," I said. He held the door, and I passed. And I didn't let my breath out until the 3rd step down. Outside, the air felt like cold water poured over the brain. I walked 3 blocks without thinking, then another 2 on purpose. Only when I turned the corner by the alley with the mural of a wolf looking over its shoulder did I let myself check the photos. There it was. Proof you could explain to a jury. Proof a reporter could carry without getting sued into silence. Proof my brother's accident fit inside a model meant to make failure look like choice. I should have felt triumph. I felt weight. I went home and cooked real food, not because I was hungry, but because I said I would. Eggs in a pan, spinach wilting like a sigh, toast that tasted like a kindergarten memory. I ate standing up at the counter and let the warmth into my chest where it could soften the edges. Then I put the photos in a folder inside a folder inside a folder, named like I'd forget it. I backed them up to a little drive I'd taped to the bottom of my desk. I wrote a summary, short sentences, numbers first. People always argue with feelings, they stumble over math. I slept 3 hours, woke before the alarm, body hot with adrenaline that had nowhere polite to go. Ran to the end of the block and back, and then again. And then one more, even though my lungs burned like truth. At the diner, the regulars tipped in nickels and trauma. The coffee steam rose like a small mercy. The manager told me he needed me Saturday, and I told him I couldn't, and he lifted his chin like a threat. I met his eyes and said I can't. He shrugged like people are interchangeable. I laughed under my breath because I was not anymore. The reporter messaged. She wanted to meet. Neutral place. Noon. She wrote, "Bring whatever you're comfortable losing." It made me like her more. We met in the back of a library where the old magazines go to wait for someone to remember them. She wore a denim jacket and hair that said she ran to get here. Her eyes were the kind that put puzzles together while you blinked. I gave her the summary. Not the originals. Not yet. She read, lips moving the way some people do when numbers line up like crosshairs. "You know what this is," she said. "I know what it is," I said, "but I also know what they'll say it is." "Misinterpretation," she said. "Context," I said. "Drafts," she said. "Malicious framing," I said. She smiled without humor. "You've been to this dance." "It's the only one they teach where I'm from." She asked about my brother. I told her his laugh. The cheap keyboard he bought at a yard sale and learned to play off YouTube. The way he'd show up with those deli cookies with the neon frosting like a 5-year-old who won a prize and share them even when he wanted them all. She kept her recording off and her eyes on me. "I'm sorry," she said, and it sounded like a sentence that took work. "What happens if we run this?" I asked. "We'll get stonewalled," she said. "Then they'll open a review. Then they'll claim internal steps. Then they'll announce a committee. Then the committee will recommend what they were already doing, unless, I said, unless people make it cost more to ignore than to act." I nodded. "I can help with that." She slid the summary back. "I can't protect you if you're sloppy," she said. "I can protect you if you're patient." "I'm more patient than I look." "That's good," she said, "because they're more shameless than they look." We shook hands. Her palm was cool and steady. When she left, I watched the door close like a curtain. The comments on my last video had tripled. Stories, names, screenshots of letters with the same phrasing, like a ghostwriter who billed by the word. People who said they'd sat in waiting rooms being told their impatience proved they weren't serious. People who'd been assigned coaches who missed 2 appointments and then wrote "client no-show" in the system. I did something that felt small and turned out to be a fuse. I made a form. Not fancy. A simple list of questions. What program? What dates? What emails? What was said? What was promised? Did you keep copies? Can you share them? Do you want to be anonymous? Would you speak at a meeting? Do you need support getting there? I posted the link with a voiceover that said quietly, "They count on us being scattered. Let's collect ourselves." By morning, 50 responses. By lunch, 200. By night, more than I could hold with one pair of hands. So I asked for hands, not heroes, helpers, a retired paralegal, a grad student who did stats and liked to break bad graphs, a teacher on leave, a guy who said he installed floors by day and fought bullies by night, and then wrote, "I'm kidding, but also I'm not." We split shifts. We made a spreadsheet. That would make a bureaucrat cry. We built categories the way they did, but for care, not control. People who needed urgent help, people who had documentation, people who were ready to speak, people who wanted to stay quiet but wanted this to stop. The peer man texted, a number that changed every time, which I took as a lesson. He wrote, "You're building an engine. Tune it." I wrote back, "I'm learning the parts." He wrote, "Good. Tomorrow you'll need them all." The next public comment meeting moved to a bigger room after the video of my first 2 minutes found an audience that usually stayed home to watch the city decide without them. The bigger room still wasn't big enough. People stood at the back and leaned in the doorway and gathered outside to listen on phones held high like makeshift antennae. The director with the billboard smile sat on the dais, hands folded just so, a glass of water placed on his right as if hydration is integrity. He looked at me once and then looked away in the way trained to look at someone without seeing them. I didn't go first. I didn't even go early. I let the engine run. A mother told how she'd brought her paperwork twice and been told she didn't smile enough for the intake photo, and then her application timed out. A veteran told how he'd been assigned to the fast track and it turned out the fast part was how quickly they could close his case. A teenager told how the mentor they gave him told him to lower his expectations. A woman with a cane said she'd been placed on a wait list that didn't exist and then told she'd refuse services she never saw. The board tried to keep faces neutral. The director took a note he'd never read. Someone on the far end whispered to counsel and pretended to adjust a mic. When my name was called, I carried the engine with me. 200 pages. Summaries, charts, a simple timeline with arrows like street signs for people who got lost at jargon. I didn't hand them the originals. I handed them a map of their own maze. "I am not here to ask," I said, steady, low, because anger whispers better than it shouts. "I'm here to tell." I told them what was in the black folders. I told them how contractors were paid to make people go away. I told them about the code in the margins, 2 MSCAR and 4C loss and 1A debt, and how those weren't labels. They were instructions on where to press to make people fold. Someone on the dais shifted like their chair had teeth. "This is illegal," I said, "but worse, it's ordinary. You made cruelty into process so you wouldn't have to see it. I am putting it back into sight." I slid the packet across. The clerk took it like it might bite. The red light blinked. My 2 minutes up. "Thank you," the chair said. A reflex with no blood in it. I stepped back. The room didn't breathe. Then it exhaled in a long, low sound that started as a murmur and turned into a hum that felt like power rediscovering itself. Reporters huddled. Phones held high. The director leaned to the side and a staffer brought a whisper to his ear that made his left eyebrow twitch. Outside, the woman with the cane hugged me so hard my ribs protested, and I didn't care. The veteran shook my hand like we were about to lift something heavy together. The teenager took a selfie with me and held up 2 fingers and said, "For your brother." And I had to look at the sky for a second. That night, they published a statement. Of course they did. Language tuned to say everything and nothing. We take these concerns seriously. We are committed to transparency. We welcome feedback. It was the bureaucratic version of a shrug in a tuxedo. I stitched their statement on screen with the invoice bonus clause and the archive drawer number and the contractor's name, and let them sit next to each other like a before and after you could not reconcile. I didn't add music. The silence did the job. The pier man called, voice clean as always. "You moved them," he said. "Did I?" I said. "Because survival teaches you not to believe the floor is stable just because it looks like wood." "You moved the camera," he said. "That's more dangerous to them." "What's next?" I asked. "Now they'll knock on your door," he said, "not with fists, with favors." He was right. They called, not the director. Partners. They asked me to join a working group, to participate in the conversation, to bring my lived experience into the room. I told them lived experience doesn't fit on a conference table. They told me they could make space. I told them to start by making space for the people whose files they coded 2MSCAR. They tried a different angle, a small grant, no strings. To sustain your advocacy. I laughed in a way that made the caller swallow. "You're trying to buy my brakes," I said. "I don't slow down for money." They tried respectable pressure. A friendly lawyer explained the risks of defamation, the complexities of procurement law, the need to be measured. I thanked him for his concern and asked if he'd like to represent the woman whose wait list didn't exist. He said that wasn't his practice area. In the morning, the reporter ran the story. Not all of it. Enough. The invoice. The bonus clause. The segmentation rubric in the margins. The archive drawer. A quote from me without the parts where my voice cracked. The director announced an independent review. The mayor announced an independent review. A council member asked for my files in a letter that forgot to say please. I posted the letter with "Sure, bring a subpoena." My mother called. She said, "Ipo, mijo, you sound tired." I said, "I'm okay." She said, "Your brother would be so proud." I had to sit down. Underneath the noise, the work grew simple. Clean my room, make my bed, eat real food, run to the end of the block and then a little more. Read the manual, translate it to human, tell one story, then another, turn rage into heat. Use it to forge, never let it drive. The man from the pier texted again, a number I'd never seen. He wrote, "Chapter closed?" I looked at the wall, strings, boxes, notes, a map of a machine that thought it was smarter than the people it ground down. I looked at the window, the city pretending to be asleep. I looked at myself in the glass, tired, yes, but not the same. "Not closed," I wrote. "Open." He wrote back one word, "Good." In the quiet after, I sat with my brother the way you sit with the dead when they don't haunt you anymore, but they keep you company. I told him I learned the lock. I told him I walked the map. I told him I'm not asking them to fix anything because people who build mazes don't know how to make exits. We'll build our own. The next morning, I posted a video that didn't talk about the director or the invoices or the archive drawer. I told people how to make a binder, how to file a public records request that gets a response, how to show up to a meeting and speak so your voice lands, how to find your breath when the room tries to take it, how to hold attention like a tool, not a trophy. It was small. It was the biggest thing I'd done. And across the city, across cities that looked like mine, I watched as people made their beds and laced their shoes and gathered their papers and said their names into microphones that had never heard them before. A system is a stack of habits. So is a life. I rewired mine. Now they have to decide if they're ready to rewire theirs. The story didn't end when the headlines cooled. It shifted. They stopped trying to sweet talk me and started trying to scrub me. Not off the internet. You can't erase a ghost that keeps talking. But off the map of someone worth listening to. A podcast host with a smooth voice and a smile you can hear did a segment about outrage entrepreneurs. He didn't say my name, but he didn't need to. He described me like a police sketch. Anonymous sources question her motives. No financial transparency. A pattern of antagonism that undermines solutions. I watched the clip at my counter with an egg cooling on the plate and my phone lighting up like a stubborn Christmas tree. Someone texted, "You see this?" Someone else wrote, "Keep going." Someone else wrote, "You brought this on yourself," as if harm is a dress you pick off a rack. I recorded a reply in one take, no edits, no music, no polish. "I don't run ads," I said. "I don't sell courses. I don't take the money they offered me to hush. My motive is simple. My brother is dead, and your maze is still standing. If that makes me an entrepreneur, I'm investing in exits." I hit post and put the phone face down, like it could hear me cursing. The next day, a letter slid under my door. Thick paper, sober font. The kind of envelope that tries to sound expensive. It was a cease and desist written by a firm whose website featured stock photos of smiling people with crossed arms, defamation, false light, tortious interference. The words were meant to be heavy. I read them out loud and wondered how many stairs a threat has to climb before it becomes a warning. Then I did the thing I promised myself I would do when flames licked the edges. I didn't feed them. I scanned the letter, sent it to the reporter, sent it to the paralegal in our helpers group, filed it, and went for a run. End of the block, back, then again. feet slapping pavement like punctuation. When my lungs burned, I said in my head, not the driver. Rage is not the driver. I drove. Back home, I wrote a checklist on a sticky note and taped it to the wall under the segmentation codes. Eat real food. Make the bed. Speak at 7 p.m. Call mom. 5 calls to claimants who asked for help. 1 small joy. I left the joy line blank. The day would have to earn it. By noon, 3 new forms hit the top of our stack with flags shouting at the edges. 1 from a woman who'd lost her job after an appointment conflict that wasn't hers. 1 from a man who'd been told a payment processed and then learned processed means disappeared. 1 from a daughter writing for her father who doesn't read English and doesn't like to ask for anything but wants to know why the city keeps sending letters that begin with "we regret." I called the daughter first. We spoke in the low, careful rhythm of people trying not to spill grief. I gave her steps, 3 in a row, all small. She cried at the second one. I asked if she had a printer. She didn't. I told her which library to go to and which desk to ask for by name and the way to tell the clerk what she needed. I told her to tell the clerk I sent her. I said it like a password. When I hung up, I put a hand on the countertop and bent my head and just breathed. 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. It didn't make time move faster. It made me stop trying to. At 7, I spoke. Not at City Hall, online, our channel. The community we'd built out of string and duct tape and stubborn. We did live calls now once a week with moderators who knew how to keep things simple. No aisles, no dais, no clock that flashed red. I told people what the law says about public records, what processed means when a caseworker says it with their eyes down, how to write a demand letter that sounds like a door crack, not a battering ram. We weren't there to vent. We were there to gather tools. If someone slipped into rage, we let them. Then we buckled it in the back seat and handed them the wheel again. That night, the pier man sent 1 line. Look at the contractor's parent company. I'd looked. I thought I had. I opened the folder like a magician pulling a scarf he didn't trust. The parent company hid inside a nonprofit. The nonprofit had a mission that made angels blush, equity, access, removing barriers for the underserved. Their board was a who's who of donors in suits that fit. But nonprofits file forms. Forms have line items. Line items leave crumbs. I traced the crumbs. A grant paid to an innovation lab that shared an address with a consultancy that shared a surname with the director's college roommate. The innovation lab did behavioral insights. The consultancy did change management. The city contracts paid for both. And the nonprofit did the thank yous on polite stationery. I drew boxes. I drew arrows. I put question marks where the money turned a corner and put on a mask. The more I mapped, the simpler it got. A handful of people had figured out how to build a virtuous circle that spun like a casino wheel. Good on the door, good in the press, good on the grant. And inside outcomes that look neat on paper, messy in real life, profitable either way. I recorded a video at 2 a.m., voice low, because my neighbors sleep light and my walls are thin. I didn't name names, I named patterns. If the same address appears on a nonprofit, a contractor, and a consultancy, I said, you're not looking at collaboration, you're looking at a loop. I drew the loop with a marker on a piece of printer paper and held it up to the camera. I said, loops are how people hide. Break the loop. Force a line. It wasn't sexy, it got watched. By morning, my helpers had built a little app, nothing fancy, that let anyone put in an address and see which good places it touched. People started sending us matches, an address that tied a food pantry to a political action fund, an address that tied a mentoring nonprofit to a private security firm, an address that tied a counseling program to a landlord who filed eviction papers like a person breathes. We didn't post the raw map, we posted questions. Why does this look like this? Who benefits from this triangle? Why does the invoice line repeat like a chorus in a song you didn't choose? The reporter called. You're about to make powerful people very tired, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice this time. I'm already tired, I said. Good, she said. Then you'll pace yourself. She asked for one story to center the next piece, not a system, a person. I thought of the daughter at the library and the father who didn't read English and the letter that began with "We regret." I asked for permission. They said yes. We blacked out names. We left in the words that pierced. The paper ran it with a headline that did its best to parcel truth into 6 words. The comments lit with 2 kinds of people: those who recognized the maze and those who accused the runner of being dramatic about walls. I didn't argue in the comments. I went for my run. End of the block, back, then again. Halfway through, a car slowed. The window rolled down. A man shouted, "Get a hobby!" and laughed like a villain with a sore throat. I laughed back. "This is my hobby," I said, and kept going until his engine was a memory. The next letter under my door wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. A church on the south side wanted me to speak, not big, Wednesday night. The kind of room where people hold potlucks and funerals and the quiet between them. I said yes, not because I like microphones, because rooms like that tell the truth the city tries to forget. I wore clean jeans and the black hoodie with the stain only I see. The pastor introduced me with kindness a person can feel in their bones. I told a story, not about my brother this time, but about a man with a cane who teaches his grandson how to hold the pen tight enough to write, but loose enough to keep blood in the fingers. I told the room what processed means. I told them where the exit doors are, literal and not. I told them to bring a buddy to every appointment. I told them to repeat sentences back until the employee had to hear them. I told them to record themselves reading their own file out loud when no one would read it to them. I told them I don't save anyone. We make maps, we walk them together. After, a woman touched my sleeve and said, "I thought my life was just bad luck." I said, "They trained you to think that. You're not broken. The maze is designed." She cried in that quiet way that breaks and builds at once. I wrote my number on her bulletin because sometimes paper is the only thing that feels like it will stay. The pier man didn't text that night. He didn't need to. I could feel the floor tilt under the building with the mirrored glass. Someone inside had realized their halo didn't shine in the dark. 2 days later, the director resigned to spend more time with family. The press release did that thing where it thanks a person for their years of service and vision and commitment to equity. They named an interim. The interim had a bio that sounded like someone ordering change from a catalog. People messaged me balloons and confetti. I didn't celebrate. I made a list. The director was a lid. With him lifted, you can see what's cooking. That's when the steam burns. The interim called me from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message with a voice like a teacher's on the day before a break. "We're serious about reform," she said. "We'd value your input." I texted the reporter. I said, "Well, what do you think?" She wrote back, "A meeting is a box. If you go in, know your exits." I decided to go, not to be absorbed, to carry a mirror. I set terms. The meeting would be recorded. A community member would join me. We would meet in a library, not their building. If they wanted my input, they could leave their comfort. They agreed to everything but the recording. "We want to encourage candor," the interim said. I said, "Candor is allergic to dark rooms." We compromised, audio only. I set my phone on the table like a quiet witness. The interim arrived with 2 staffers who held pens like they were weapons. She wore a blazer the color of a storm cloud and a smile that tried to be warm and landed on careful. She shook my hand and my community member's hand and said our names like she'd practiced. "I read your materials," she said. "I hope you read them twice," I said. She smiled at that, small and real. I did. We sat in chairs that squeaked like they wanted to be left alone. I spoke first because I had come to do the steering. "You pay for deterrence, why?" I said, "Stop that. You code people by pain and then squeeze. Stop that. You outsource outcomes and count the bodies that walk away as success. Stop that. You deny discovery with privacy excuses but share data when it helps your contractors meet quotas. Stop that. You call this equity when it is efficiency dressed in empathy's clothes. Stop that. The staffer's pens moved like mice. The interim didn't flinch. What would you start? She asked. I took out a one-page sheet I'd written at 2 a.m, lines straight, bullets clean. Plain language notices, timers that count down in the portal with clear dates. A human at a desk who answers a phone, not a queue with music that punishes. Appeals that pause adverse action. Audits that randomize files for review and publish monthly, not when the scandal crests. Training that forbids segmentation by shame. And the contractors? She asked. No bonuses for disappearance, I said. Pay for verified outcomes only and outcomes defined by people, not dashboards. Full audits on addresses that overlap. If a nonprofit shares space with a consultancy, you disclose it on page 1 in letters big enough to read across a room. The interim looked tired. She also looked like she'd once been a person who believed in the word public and had gotten talked out of it by rooms with carpet. We can implement some of this, she said. Not some, I said, all. That's not how budgets. Then change the budgets, I said. That's the job. We were quiet long enough for the audio to pick up a librarian shushing a kid who didn't want to be hushed. My community member spoke, voice soft like a blanket that still warms. She told the interim what a Tuesday feels like when you're waiting for a portal to let you inside a city you pay for. She said, I want to stop needing people like her, and put a hand on my sleeve. I want you to work so I can go back to living. The interim nodded. Give me time, she said. Time is the only thing your system already took, I said. We'll give you a timeline. We'll stand here while you walk it. We left with nothing promised and everything placed on a clock. Outside, the sky had that low, gray belly that means rain is checking its watch. I felt something I hadn't felt since I started pulling threads, an edge of hope sharp enough to cut. I didn't trust it. I wrote it down. Back home, I tacked new pages on the wall, plain language notices at the top, appeals pause action in a box, random audits monthly, underlined twice. I went for my run. End of the block and back, then again, then to the corner where the wolf in the mural looks over its shoulder. I looked where it looked. A kid on a skateboard, wobbling, determined. He caught my eye and raised a hand in that universal salute of the almost brave. I raised mine back. The next morning the portal changed. Not much. Just a banner at the top with a date that meant something. Applications received by date will be processed by date. A clock icon that wasn't ugly, a phone number with a message that didn't scold. People texted me screenshots like they were sending photos of a baby. I didn't post congratulations, I posted a timer. If they miss their own date, I said, we file together. The contractor announced they were reviewing incentives to ensure alignment with community values. Translation. The bonus clause was burning a hole in their jacket pocket, and they needed to throw it into the river before it lit the lining. The nonprofit issued a statement about reaffirming independence. The Innovation Lab changed its website banner. The consultancy page went down for maintenance. I took screenshots. Screenshots are a poor person's time machine, then the call, not the interim, the state. A deputy secretary who spoke in legalese like it was his first language. He asked for my documents. I said subpoena. He said process. I said clock. He said he understood. He did not. The day ended with a small joy I didn't expect. I found a secondhand keyboard at a yard sale cheap, missing 2 keys that didn't matter if you played like a kid. I bought it. I brought it home. I set it on the table where I count breath. I pressed 1 key and then another, and it sounded like a hallway I hadn't walked in years. I laughed. It counted. The next week, we held a clinic at the library. We borrowed a conference room and filled it with printers and paper and people who know how to say, "It's okay, we'll go step by step." Like a spell. The woman from church came with a folder so neat it made me want to cry. The daughter came with her father, who shook my hand like he was forgiving me for not knowing his language. I told him I knew his room. He smiled. We filed forms, we took photos, we built binders, we taught a toddler to high-five after her mother got a date. Stamped at the top of a page that someone can't ignore. When I got home, the pier man was outside my building leaning against the curb like a lesson waiting to be learned. He looked at the secondhand keyboard through my window and raised an eyebrow. "It was $5, I said. "You overpaid," he said, and smiled. We climbed the stairs. He walked to the wall and stood with his hands in his hoodie pockets and read like a person who knows time is a currency and spends it with care. When he got to random audits monthly, he tapped the page like you tap a desk to wake it up. "This," he said, "they'll fight this." "I figured," I said. "Is good," he said. "Make them fight in public." He sat at the table, eyes on the keyboard. "You play?" "I make noise," I said. "Noise is how you start a song," he said. He told me what I didn't want to hear but already knew. "They're not done. They'll try something else. A whisper campaign. A data leak that isn't a leak but a framed photo. They'll dangle a job you'd be stupid not to take. They'll make you choose between the fight and your life." "I already chose," I said, looking at my clean bed, my folded laundry, my taped up walls, the cheap keyboard, the timer, the run to the end of the block and back. "Make sure you chose your life," he said. He stood, looked at the wall again, and then at me. "You're building more than a case," he said. "You're building instructions. That's rarer. That lasts longer." He left without the usual warning, the usual riddle. I watched him disappear into a street that flickered and fought and fed. I closed the door. I touched the keyboard. I pressed one key and then another. It wasn't a song, it was a promise. The good kind. The kind that hurts if you drop it, so you grip it and keep walking. That night, I wrote a caption under a quiet video of hands building a binder and a toddler laughing in a library. "Rewrite your fate," I wrote, "one page at a time." The maze still stood. But now, there were maps taped in kitchens and churches and corners of minds that refused to be herded. There were clocks set to dates the city chose. There were voices that knew how to land without being loud. There were exits where walls used to be. I slept hard. I dreamed of stairs, not the ones where my brother lost his breath. New ones. Lit. Clean. Without hands reaching for belts. I climbed. At the landing, a door. Not locked, not even heavy. I pushed it open and walked into a room with windows on all sides and air like a laugh. In the morning, I made the bed. I ate real food. I ran to the end of the block and back. I sat at the keyboard and learned 3 notes I could play without thinking. Then I opened the portal and watched a timer tick down to a date someone else had to meet. It was small. It was everything. They didn't come for me with handcuffs. They came with a headline. "Activist misuses donor funds, sources say." A photo pulled from a live stream where my eyes were mid-blink and my mouth mid-word like I'd been caught lying to a mirror. Anonymous quotes. Numbers that weren't numbers glued together to look like theft. I read it on my phone at the corner bodega while the clerk counted scratch-offs and a kid begged for a candy bar his mom said no to 3 times without raising her voice. The bell over the door jingled. The world went on. My stomach didn't. I called the reporter. She answered on the first ring. "I know," she said. "It's flimsy." "Flimsy burns," I said. "We'll rebut," she said. "We'll fact check, we'll run a timeline, but you can't fight a rumor head on, you starve it. In the meantime, be boring." "I'm allergic to boring," I said. "Be allergic in silence," she said. I hung up and walked to the end of the block and back because that's what the list says, and the list is the only thing that doesn't lie. 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. I whispered as I walked, not to myself, to the story. I won't let you drive. By noon, 3 TV trucks had set up outside City Hall like vultures who booked permits. The interim did a presser with a tight smile and careful verbs. Reform. Rebuild trust. Meet benchmarks. A reporter shouted my name like it was a product. She didn't say alleged. Progress, I guess. The pierman didn't text. The helpers did. The paralegal sent a bullet list of why the smear didn't meet the of and concerning test. The grad student sent a chart that ate the rumor alive and left numbers clean. The pastor sent a praying hands emoji and then, let me know what you need. And it felt like the real prayer. The woman from church sent a photo of her binder, tabs aligned like soldiers. I didn't post a reply. I posted a tutorial on how to appeal a denial without getting lost on page 2. Voice low, cuts clean, hands on paper. The algorithm likes scandal. We taught it a new trick, to like instructions. At 5 p.m., the interim released the first audit, a spreadsheet with names blacked out, dates that looked like red flags even in grayscale, and notes that said process improvement identified like that was a person. It wasn't much. It was the first brick. I made dinner, not ramen, real food. Sliced an onion and cried for a reason I could control. Sautéed spinach in a pan that wobbled but stayed on the flame. Ate sitting down. Washed the plate. Dried it. Put it back. Small rituals like sandbags when the river rises. Night dragged me by the wrist to the keyboard. 2 fingers, 3 notes. A 4th that didn't belong. Then did. Then didn't again. I stopped when the upstairs neighbor thumped the ceiling with a broom handle. Fair. Morning found a postcard in my mailbox with no return address. A photo of a beach I'd never been to. The message, "You can still walk away?" I laughed. Sounded like a bark. I turned it over and wrote my own note on the blank side. I did, from being quiet. I pinned it to the wall next to Appeals Pause Action and the wolf mural flyer from the community clinic. A collage of forward motion. The day pressed in. The form responses multiplied. A pattern started to hum. A particular contractor's clients were getting timed out at a rate that felt like policy and read like shrug. I cross-checked addresses, same loop. The nonprofit with angelic adjectives. The consultancy with a change management white paper that could tuck a sin in each paragraph and call it iteration. I called the nonprofit. A receptionist with a smile in her voice and a script in her blood said the director was in meetings. I said I can wait and meant it. I waited on hold to a music track that sounded like it was designed to lightly bleach your hope. The voice came back. He's still in meetings. Of course, I said. People like him live there. Would you like to leave a message? Tell him his loop is closing, I said, and I have questions he should want to answer with a recorder on. I hung up before she found the box to fit that sentence. A note slid under my door at dusk like the building itself wanted to whisper. No law firm letterhead this time. Thinner paper. Messier hand. They'll open a file with your name on it. Then they'll leak your address history. Then they'll forget to redact your mother's. The peer man's handwriting, I realized, not because I'd seen it, but because I hadn't. He's the kind who knows letters are knives. He keeps them sheathed. I photographed the note, burned the paper over the sink, watched the ash fall like tired snow. I didn't sleep much. I dreamed of stairs again, but this time the hands on the rail were mine and they were steady. On the landing, a door, locked. I put my ear to it and heard breathing. Not mine, the building, or the people inside who keep their lungs calm by making others hold theirs. Morning, bed made, run, eggs, spinach, coffee, phone. The interim's office posted a new banner. Random audits begin Monday. The comments screamed. Some said, finally. Some said, witch hunt. Some said, how will this fix my kitchen? I pinned it to the wall. Underlined Monday. Wrote, not enough. Then wrote, start. At noon, an email from the state deputy secretary. The subject line was so dry it crackled. Clarification of process. The body said many words that meant one thing. We're watching you. Please trip. I wrote back 3 sentences and a link to the public records law. I used full stops like hammers. The bodega kid waved when I passed. He held up 2 fingers. 2 snacks? I said. No, he grinned. 2 minutes, like you. I almost cried in the doorway. I didn't. I bought him the candy bar. His mom gave me a look that said, "Don't you dare undermine me." I handed it back to her. "For later," I said. She nodded. We were good. The whisper campaign failed to catch wind because it didn't know the weather had changed. People had a different story in their mouth now, and it tasted like steps, not scandals. Still, they tried. A thread on a forum with a username too clean. A DM that said, "We have receipts," and then attached screenshots of my own posts like that proved anything but time. I muted. I blocked. I ran. End of the block. Back. The clinic at the library doubled. We didn't have enough chairs. A girl with purple hair handed out numbers written on sticky notes because order is a kindness when the world is chaos. A guy with forearms like rebar moved printers like they were ripped feathers. The toddler from last week clapped when the copier spit out pages. Progress has a soundtrack. It's paper. I noticed the same form error twice in an hour. A date auto-filled wrong in the portal on a single question that determined a deadline. Not a bug, a trap. I screen recorded 3 times. Different people, same wrong. I posted the clips. If you see this, stop, reload, take a photo, send it to us. They'll call it a glitch. We'll call it a pattern. The interim's office replied in our comments with the icy tone polite people use when they're mad. "We are investigating," I wrote back. "Good. We already did." That night, the reporter sent me a draft. "Off the record," she said, "look for holes." I read slowly, out loud. Found 2 spots where an adjective tried to do a noun's job. Crossed them out in my head. Called her. "Say less," I said. "Show more." She laughed. "You're getting good at this." "I was always good at this," I said. "We just call it different things where I'm from." At 3 a.m., a siren carved the night like a serrated knife. I lay awake and counted breaths and wished I could teach the city to do the same. The radiator hummed a song that wanted to be a lullaby and failed. I got up and stood at the window and looked at the wolf mural and the empty street pointing like an arrow at a door I couldn't see. Dawn brought rain, the kind that rinses without apologizing. I wore the hoodie, stain, and all, and went to City Hall because sometimes a body in a hallway changes the ethics of a building. The interim saw me and did the math on her face and then smiled anyway. "We found the portal issue," she said. "Push to fix." "You mean you removed the trap?" I said. "Good. We'll release a statement." "Release a tutorial," I said. "People need steps, not apologies." She nodded. "We can do that." "Do," I said. We stood for a second in a silence that felt like 2 people assembling furniture. Awkward, necessary. You learn by bruising your thumbs. She said, "The random audits begin today." "I brought a list," I said, and handed her 20 docket numbers we crowdsourced in a night. She took it like it might bite. "We'll add them," she said. "Publish what you find," I said. "Monthly, on time, in plain words." "We will," she said. I believed her enough to move. Outside, a man in a suit I recognized from the nonprofit's website leaned against the column like a stock photo waiting for a caption. He looked at me like I owed him a narrative arc. "You've cost good people their jobs here," he said. "Then their jobs were built wrong," I said. "You don't understand the complexity of service delivery." "You made it complex so you could make it profitable," I said. "I'm making it simple so it can be human." He laughed the way people laugh when they're not sure if you're dangerous or just rude. "We do real work," he said. "Do it better," I said, and walked away because language only knows so many dances, and I'd already done that one. I posted at 7 p.m., on the dot. Voice steady, hands on paper. "Audits begin, here's what to watch for." Bullet points like stepping stones across a river. If an auditor asks your coach to stand outside, write that down. If they use the word sampling to avoid your file, ask what the sample size is and who picked it. If they tell you a timeline is flexible, say back, "Please put the new deadline in writing." We don't need clever, we need scripts. The clip found its people. It also found the people who hate people like us. They commented like they thought words were elbows. I set mods to delete anything that smelled like rot. Boredom is our friend. Haters hate silence more than they hate us. A week passed in work boots, calls, clinics, print, post, run, eat, breathe, bed, a rhythm that made my bones hum like phone lines. Then the peer man texted, a rare daylight message, a pin drop, a time, no words. It was a parking lot behind the nonprofit's Innovation Lab, the kind of lot that glows with bad lighting and broken promises. I arrived early. He arrived earlier. We stood between two long shadows and watched a door. 3 people exited, suits without ties. One carried a banker's box like a prop. They laughed the way the confident laugh when they mistake pressure for a breeze. A 4th person followed, alone, carrying a laptop like it had weight beyond its metal. That one, the peer man said. You know her? He shook his head. But she's looking for a way out. We didn't follow. We waited. 10 minutes later, she returned alone with the laptop gone and her shoulders down 2 inches. She stood by the dumpster and cried without sound. He stepped forward first. You okay? He asked. She flinched like kindness had teeth. Then she nodded. I quit. On purpose? I asked. I didn't mean to, she said. Then I did. We kept our voices like blankets. She told us she was a data analyst. She told us she signed an NDA that read like a gag with a pretty bow. She told us she had backups for safety, quiet, careful, not dramatic. You want to go on record? I asked. She laughed like a cough. I want to breathe. Then let's start there, I said, and we did. 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. I watched her shoulders find their home. We didn't take anything from her that night. We gave her a number. We gave her a list. Take photos of your backup's locations. Email them to yourself from a new account. Write down dates. Don't move anything yet. She nodded like a person who sees a ladder that isn't greased. 2 days later, a hard drive changed hands in a public place where 100 cameras watched 100 other stories. We didn't celebrate. We did inventory, contracts, emails with phrases like acceptable attrition and optics risk. Scatter plots that looked clean until you colored them by zip code. We didn't dump it online. We don't believe in drowning people in truth they can't swallow. We built a timeline. We mapped decisions to outcomes. We found the hole where bonuses hid, smiling. We called the reporter. We called a lawyer who works for free when the powerful call that irresponsible. We sharpened, then lit, then carried the candle where it needed to go. The story broke on a Tuesday because Tuesdays are when people expect to be bored and are therefore vulnerable to surprise. Internal data shows city paid for failure, the headline said. The subhead did the heavy lifting. Bonuses tied to clients quitting, documents reveal. The interim called a press conference she didn't run from. I stood at the back. The director who resigned was not there. The nonprofit sent a statement with the word mischaracterization in it 5 times. The consultancy website redirected to a page that said, "We're listening," and I took a screenshot because irony should be archived. A hand touched my sleeve. The state deputy secretary, he spoke low. "We'll open a formal inquiry." "You'll finish it?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "On time?" I asked. He hesitated. "On time," he said, and I watched his throat decide to mean it. The clinic that night was a party without music. People hugged in ways that hurt and healed. The toddler wore a cardboard crown made out of a manila folder. The girl with purple hair drew a wolf on the sign-in sheet. The veteran laughed for the first time in a month. The mother with the cane walked to the table without leaning on anyone. The father who didn't read English signed his name in a box and underlined it twice. A man I'd never seen before waited until the end. He was clean in the way that means neat, not money. He said, "I work at the portal vendor." We stilled. He said, "They told us to keep the countdown clocks off or you're on ice." Much pressure, they said. But it wasn't pressure, it was proof. He showed me an email. "Turn off timers until further notice." He whistled low. Notice turned into forever. "You willing to testify?" I asked. He looked at the toddler with the crown, who was now trying to staple nothing to nothing. He nodded. Yeah, he said, I like clocks. We wrote procedures on the board like a recipe. Affidavit basics. How to anonymize correctly. What to do when your boss calls you into a quick chat. We laughed harder than the room deserved. We cried less than we wanted to. We did work. They tried one more time to smear. A story about me monetizing outrage because we launched a tiny fundraiser to pay for printers and bus cards and the cheap keyboard I'd already bought. I posted a photo of the receipts. I posted a video of the printer with paper jammed like a bad joke. I posted a spreadsheet the grad student made that broke down every cent and labeled the rest dreams. People donated $10 like it was a fist. It added up to a shoulder people could lean into. Somewhere in there, I forgot to be scared. Not because the threat was gone, because the map grew bigger than the maze. The pier man visited less. When he did, he checked the wall like a doctor checking a pulse. He tapped random audits monthly again and said, make them quarterly, randomize from the state level. City can't audit itself forever. We're writing that, I said. Good, he said. Also, sleep. I sleep. He lifted an eyebrow. Sometimes, I said, make it more. He left a book I didn't ask for, a secondhand manual on community organizing written by a woman whose sentences could light damp wood. I read it in the lull between tired and rest and underlined a line, power is attention plus time. I taped it to the wall under decide where yours goes. It was raining again when the first audit report dropped with real teeth. Names blacked in the right places, numbers that didn't flinch. Incentive structure has been discontinued. Portal defects corrected. Public notices revised for clarity. Independent oversight recommended. People texted confetti. I turned my phone face down. I sat at the keyboard. I played the 3 notes, added a 4th. It landed. For once it landed. My mother called. You sound lighter, she said. I'm not, I said, but I'm stronger. Strength is a kind of light, she said. I know, I said, and I did. The next morning, a letter with a real seal, not a sticker. The state initiated a formal consent decree process, terms to be hammered, deadlines to be set, oversight to be given teeth. The kind of document that makes cities sit up like students. I took a picture of the seal. I sent it to the helpers. I sent it to the church group. I sent it to the girl with purple hair. She replied with the wolf she'd drawn, now wearing a crown. I didn't post right away. I made the bed. I ate. I ran. I wrote 10 sentences by hand. I called my mother. I tuned the keyboard with a screwdriver that wasn't meant for tuning. I stood at the window and watched the street do its morning stretch. I breathed. 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. I whispered in the glass, we're not done. We're not owed. We're here. Then I posted, not triumph, a task list. Here's what a consent decree should say. Bullets. Timers in the portal by default. Independent audits quarterly. No bonuses for disappearance ever again. Plain language notices with deadlines in bold. A phone number that a human picks up. Community seats on the oversight board with votes, not just chairs. Publish monthly metrics that measure people, not paperwork. I ended with a sentence my brother would have mocked and then framed. We don't want to win, we want to weigh. The comments filled with people who wanted the same. A few with people who didn't. I liked the ones who argued in good faith because you only sharpen metal by striking it. The bad faith I left to rot. The city scheduled a hearing for the decree late on a Friday like change has office hours. We showed anyway. The room was too small again. The microphone squealed again, the board shuffled papers again, and people told the truth again like they had a sermon under their tongue. I spoke late. I kept it short. Make it binding, make it public, make it plain. I handed over a 1-pager. I watched it travel hand to hand like a thing with its own oxygen. Outside, rain had rinsed the mural so clean the wolf looked like it could step off the wall. The toddler with the crown slept on her mother's shoulder, mouth open, dreaming of a world where printers don't jam and phones pick up and stares don't end in hands reaching for belts. The pier man stood across the street, hands in pockets, head tipped like he was listening for a train in the distance. He raised 2 fingers, not peace, not victory. 2 minutes. I raised mine back. That night, no letters, no threats, no headlines that tried to make me feel like my life was a plot twist. Just the keyboard, a plate washed and put away, a bed made, shoes drying by the radiator, and a city settling into a new shape like a spine that decided to stand up straighter. I fell asleep to rain, not sirens. I dreamed of stairs that led to a door that opened before I touched it. I walked through. On the other side, not a room, a street. People going about their small, important lives. Clocks that weren't weapons, maps that weren't mazes, a sound like a laugh that starts in the chest and spills. Morning would come with more work. With hearings and edits, and the state deputy's voice caught between law and heart, with the nonprofit's rebrand, with the consultancy's We've Learned essay, with the portal's new glitches and the audit's missed deadlines and the heavy, ordinary habit of people in buildings to forget the people outside them. Morning would come with shoes to tie and a block to run and notes to play and a list to tape under the wolf's eye, but for now a pause, a breath the size of a city. 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. The consent decree didn't fall from the sky like a miracle. It crawled. Drafts became drafts of drafts. Edits turned into arguments dressed in the clothes of clarifications. The state deputy secretary's emails multiplied until they felt like gnats. The city's lawyers wanted flexibility. The nonprofit lobby wanted collaboration. The consultancy, suddenly shutting down, wanted the mercy that always arrives late for the wrong people. We kept showing up. The hearing rooms smelled like dust and resignation. We brought our own air. The girl with purple hair brought highlighters. The veteran brought a hand tally clicker, 1 click for every deflection. The pastor brought paper cups and tea. The toddler wore her crown backward and fell asleep against her mother while adults decided how much time other adults were allowed to waste. Timers in the portal, I said again. Plain language notices, audits quarterly, random, statewide, no bonuses for disappearance, community seats with actual votes. My voice learned how to be steel without being sharp. They nodded in that way that means they're counting votes elsewhere. The interim's eyes tried to tell me she was on my side. I believed her until the room emptied and the state man asked for a sidebar, and the word tasted like bleach. I went home, made the bed, ran to the end of the block and back, ate eggs and spinach and a piece of toast that tasted like childhood. Practiced the 3 notes, added a 4th, missed it twice, got it on the 3rd try. Our clinic at the library turned into a factory for dignity. We didn't file for people. We taught them to file for themselves, and then we stood close while they did. A woman who had never used a copier squared her shoulders and fed pages like a pro and cried when the machine stamped a date. A man who hadn't held a pen in 20 years signed his name like a declaration. A teenager who'd been told, lower your expectations, lowered her chin and raised her standards instead. At night, I posted the quiet videos that seemed to move the world 1 inch at a time. Hands folding tabs into binders, a highlighter dragging straight through a sentence that had lied in low contrast for a decade. A voice saying, slowly, you have the right to ask for your file. You have the right to see what they wrote about you. You have the right to be in the room where your life is being decided. The smear machine sputtered and coughed, then pivoted. They stopped painting me as a thief and started painting me as a tyrant, unelected, unaccountable, activist blocking reforms. They said I demanded perfection at the cost of progress, as if progress is a room you sneak through when no one's watching. I didn't answer. I kept a promise. I would not feed the story that starved people. I fed the people instead. 2 weeks in, the state sent a new draft. It wasn't everything. It was enough to prove they'd heard us, timers required, audits quarterly, bonuses for disappearance prohibited, a plain language standard for all notices, phone lines that must be answered by humans during business hours. The oversight board had seats for community representatives, but no votes. A museum with chairs. I circled that clause until the paper looked bruised. Then I wrote one word in the margin, big enough to see across the room: votes. We rallied in the only way that doesn't rot you from the inside: precise, boring, relentless, calls, emails, not scripts, instructions. Say this sentence. Ask this question. Repeat this word until their pen writes it. Votes. The interim called me. "You're making it hard to pass," she said, not angry, just tired. "It's supposed to be hard," I said, "or it falls easy later." She exhaled like she'd been taught to do by someone with soft hands. "I'll see what I can do," she said. "Do what you must," I said, and hung up because grace is not being nice to power, it's being ruthless with yourself. The pier man didn't text for days. I thought I'd imagined him, a conscience with a hoodie. Then a scrap of paper showed up wedged under my door like a sigh. "Check the training budgets." I did. It took a day and a night and the part of my brain that likes patterns. The city paid hundreds of thousands for trauma-informed customer service sessions run by a vendor whose brochure made compassion sound like a product. Meanwhile, the front desk had 3 people and 2 phones, one of which didn't ring. It screamed. I posted a clip. If your budget buys the performance of kindness instead of the practice of it, you built a theater, not a building. It was the closest I'd come to poetry in months. It hit hard anyway. The reporter called. "You okay?" she asked. No pretense, no preamble. "I'm fine," I lied. "You sound hollow." "I'm tired," I said, "but the kind that makes you sleep, not the kind that makes you quit." "Good," she said. "I filed your public records request for the vendor contracts. Expect a stone wall painted the color of privacy." I laughed for the first time that week. I brought a chisel. The state set the final hearing for a Friday at 6 p.m. The time cities choose when they hope people will forget their citizens. We packed the room anyway. The pastor opened with a prayer that sounded like instructions. The veteran clicked his counter every time the words flexibility and discretion appeared. The girl with purple hair had cut out letters from construction paper and taped them to a poster board. "Votes or it's a photo op." The toddler wore her crown and held a stapler like a scepter. The wolf on the flyer watched us from the corner like it had our back. The deputy secretary cleared his throat. The document, he said, had been finalized with input from all stakeholders. The board member with the tidy beard thanked the community for their passion. The interim looked at me and then away and then back again like a person about to tell a child the truth about a broken toy. The clause had changed. Community representatives on the oversight board would have votes. Not advisory, real. You could feel the room change temperature. It warmed like a hand over a burner that used to be cold. The veteran clicked his counter 3 times in triumph, then stopped because he's a serious man. The girl with purple hair cried in that quiet way that makes sound in your teeth. The pastor said, "Amen," like an engineer signing off on a bridge. The toddler banged the stapler twice. The mother with the cane squeezed my hand so hard my bones remember it. I didn't smile. Not yet. Smiles are for endings. We were still in the middle. They called the vote. The board voted. It passed. The gavel tapped. Not quite music. Enough. Outside, the sky hung low and heavy like it wanted to rain but felt shy. The crowd moved onto the steps. Someone popped a cheap bottle of sparkling that sprayed like a bad sprinkler. The wolf mural looked cleaner than I remembered. The city's windows watched us with their quiet eyes. The nonprofit released a statement that said they welcomed the decree and look forward to partnering and remain steadfast, and the verbs were so earnest they almost apologized for the nouns. The consultancy's site went back up with a new page titled Lessons Learned. The director who resigned posted a photo of a beach and a sunset and a caption about gratitude. I scrolled past it and made eggs. The night brought no peace. The night brought power out of the building and into the street where it belongs, and power doesn't sleep. My phone buzzed with DMs from cities I'd never been to, a woman in Detroit, a man in Fresno, a crew in Tulsa. The maps are different. The maze is the same. How did you build the clinic? How did you break the loop? How do you keep going when you're tired? I recorded a video at the kitchen counter with the light too harsh and my eyes too honest. Start with the list, I said. Make the bed, eat, run, breathe, 10 sentences, then build a table and put printers on it. Teach people to say, please put it in writing, and please show me the policy and please repeat that back. Give them a timer and a buddy and a chair. Do it every week until the room remembers itself. I added a caption. If you want a toolkit, email us. We'll send it free. We'll send it ugly. It will work. The pier man appeared in my doorway like a shadow that liked me. You did it, he said. We did the beginning, I said. He nodded. Good answer. Are you going to tell me what you are? I asked. Whistleblower, ghost, guy with a cap and good advice. He grinned. Fan of exits. Then he did something he'd never done. Sat, took off his cap, set it on the table. His hair was the kind that doesn't listen. His face was the kind that blends in until it doesn't. You don't need me like you did, he said, and that's the goal. That's the fear, I said. People leave. I don't leave, he said. I switch roles. Into what? Witness, he said. We watched the radiator hum. He looked at the keyboard and wiggled his fingers like a joke. 4 notes now? Sometimes 5, I said, proud and embarrassed. Progress, he said. He walked to the wall and read the taped pages like scripture. Votes, he said, tapping the word. Good word. I like clocks better, I said. Clocks are honest, he said. Votes are how you make clocks keep their promises. He left with no riddle, no warning, no extra note under my door. The room felt bigger. Or maybe I did. The state published the decree Monday morning at 9 a.m., as if to prove they could make a deadline when a clock bigger than theirs appeared. The document had teeth. Not fangs, teeth you could use, timers, audits, plain language, human phones, voting seats, metrics printed monthly in words and numbers the public can carry. A small paragraph tucked near the end that made me close my eyes. In recognition of the harm caused by incentive structures that rewarded attrition, the city will issue a public apology and create a fund for those negatively affected. Apologies are paper. Funds are paper with blood in it. It wasn't enough. It was a start. We held a clinic that night that felt like a baptism. People brought their binders like babies. The girl with purple hair had cut her hair shorter, a kind of change people do when they decide to. The toddler wore no crown because she didn't need one to be royal. The mother with the cane left it leaning against a chair and forgot it for 10 minutes until someone brought it to her gently. The portal's timers ticked toward dates that weren't just numbers anymore, they were promises. The phone line rang and a human picked up. The audits knocked on doors and asked for files, and the contractors started speaking in past tense about bonuses they swore were never what we said but somehow were. The nonprofit restructured on paper. The consultancy published a reading list for equity. I printed it and taped it on the bathroom wall and wrote above it, in pen, "Read it out loud to someone who can't eat it." People from other cities joined our calls. Zoom squares full of faces I wanted to feed. We shared the toolkit. Ugly, working. One city didn't have a library with printers. We shipped them too. Another had a portal that looked different. We found the timer in the code anyway. A third had a mayor who pretended to be deaf. We taught them to knock on the state's door. You keep going until someone with a badge opens. The smear machine broke like a toy. They tried one more headline. Activist turns down seat on oversight board. It was true, I turned it down. The seats weren't chairs for heroes, they were chairs for neighbors, people who had to take a bus to get there and could tell you which stop was broken. I nominated the mother with the cane, the veteran, the pastor, the girl with purple hair. They said yes. They bought new notebooks. They wrote votes on the first page like a tattoo. I slept finally. Not a nap. Sleep that has a basement. I dreamed of my brother the way you dream of the dead when the wound has scabbed and the scar is doing its quiet work. He played the cheap keyboard with 2 missing keys and made a melody anyway. He looked up and said, "You made a door." I said, "You left a key." We didn't hug. We didn't need to. The room was bigger than both of us. Morning, bed made, run, end of the block, back, then again, an extra half block because my lungs liked the sting. Eggs, spinach, toast, keyboard, 5 notes, a 6th that almost fit. I let it be wrong. I'll catch it tomorrow. I walked to City Hall because sometimes you have to look a building in the eye. The interim was in the lobby, no entourage. She saw me and met me halfway. "We posted the first metrics," she said, not bragging, reporting. "I saw," I said. "They read like a human wrote them." "A human did," she said, "in what we demoted the dashboard." I laughed. It felt like a clean window. "Good," she hesitated. "You know, this will break again," she said. "I know," I said. "You going to be here every time?" "No," I said. "We will." She smiled, small and real. "Good," she said. "I'd like to be we, too." "You already are," I said. Outside, the wolf mural had a new addition in chalk, a staircase, not fancy, straight. Each step labeled with a word: breath, bed, food, run, write, call, show, speak, vote. At the top, a door drawn half open. A little kid stood near it and traced the steps with a finger like reading. We did a live stream that night that I thought would be a celebration and turned out to be a training. People had questions. People always have questions. What if the timer hits and nothing happens? What if the phone rings and no one answers? What if the audit asks me to wait? We answered with scripts. Say, "Please escalate." Say, "Please note that in my file." Say, "I'll wait. I won't go away." It felt less like a party and more like making sure everyone had boots. After I sat alone in my kitchen with the light off and the city's glow coming through the window like a shy guest, I thought about revenge, the word that brought me to the pier with my fists closed, how it had changed shape until it wasn't about making them pay but making us whole, how we had built a machine that didn't fit in anyone's hand, how we had rewired enough of ourselves to stand in front of a system without begging it to be good, how we had stopped asking for fairness and started manufacturing it. The phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize, a photo of a binder, tabs neat. "Detroit," the message said. Another ping, a photo of a timer. "Fresno," another, a sign taped inside a church. "Clinic Wednesdays, bring your papers, bring your voice." "Tulsa," I cried finally, not pretty, not loud, the kind that makes your face new. I let it happen because the list doesn't say "don't cry." It says "don't quit." The next morning, the state deputy secretary called. His voice had more air in it. "We're forming the oversight board next month," he said. "We'll need training for the community reps." "We have a training, I said. "This ugly. It works." "Send it," he said. I did. With a note. "Make the room warm. Make the chairs level. Make the clock visible. Give them a phone line that skips the queue. Pay for their bus fare. Feed them. Don't clap. Listen." He wrote back, "We can do that." "Do?" The pier man didn't come by. He didn't text. He didn't need to. I walked past the pier at midnight anyway, not to meet a ghost, to tell the water we did what we said. The lamp threw a cone of light that made a stage out of planks. The wind cut like a joke only the cold finds funny. I stood where I'd stood that first night and I said out loud, "To the waves in the city and the ghost of a boy who carried a folder and didn't come back, I didn't ask for justice. I built some. It squeaks. It needs oil. It holds." On the way home, the rideshare driver turned down the radio and said, "This part of town gets weird at night." "So do I said, and we both laughed, and neither of us felt alone. At my door, someone had slid a note under the frame. Thin paper. Messy hand. Not the pier man. A kid, maybe. It said, "How do I start?" I wrote back on the same paper, "Make your bed. Touch grass. Eat. Run to the stop sign. Breathe. Write 10 sentences. Learn the word policy. Learn to say, please put that in writing. Bring someone with you. Bring 2 if you can. Show up on Wednesdays. We have chairs. I taped it to the wall like a recipe. I slept. I dreamed of clocks that kept time and stairs that led to doors that led to streets that didn't ask for permission to be safe. I woke before the alarm. I made the bed. I ran. I played 5 notes and found the 6th again, cleaner. I stood at the window and looked at a city that looked back without flinching. The maze still stood in places. Of course it did. But we had maps now and people who liked clocks and a board with votes and a fund that apologized with checks that cleared and a portal that told the truth by counting down in public and a church that became a clinic and a library that turned into a factory for dignity and a toddler who would grow up learning that processed means someone did their job, not that your hope got filed in a drawer. I used to think the world ran on luck. Now I know it runs on habits, and I have mine. 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. 1 step, then another. We're not alone. The first month after the decree felt like walking on a dock you'd built yourself solid, but you still listened for the groan. Metrics posted. Timers ticked. Phones picked up. The oversight board met in a public room with chairs that didn't wobble and a clock big enough to shame lateness. The mother with the cane spoke first and set a tone like a metronome. The veteran kept minutes in a spiral notebook with block letters you could read from across the table. The pastor asked the only question that matters in a building: who wasn't here and why? The girl with purple hair wore a blazer-like armor and said, motion to require plain language, like she'd been doing it her whole life. I sat in the back row and kept my hands folded because power looks better when you're not touching it. The old machine tried new tricks. A contractor quietly rebranded. The nonprofit spun up a listening tour. The consultancy pivoted to ethics advisory, which is what people who got caught call the ability to keep a straight face. We filed the names. We watched the loops. We taught the word alias to anyone who would listen. At the clinic, the paper stacks grew shorter. Not gone. Shorter. People arrived with binders already labeled. They spoke in sentences that started with per the policy and ended with in writing. The toddler retired her crown and upgraded to stickers. She handed out stars for small wins. We wore them like medals and refused to be embarrassed. The reporter dropped by and didn't ask for a quote. She brought toner cartridges. That's what justice looks like when it stops posing. My mother visited. She sat at my table and ate eggs and spinach and laughed at the keyboard with the missing keys. She said I looked taller. I said I wasn't. She tapped my chest. Here, she said. We rode the bus to City Hall and she took a photo by the Wolf mural and texted it to our family group. Tias replied with hearts and exclamation points and a recipe for a Roz that never measures water the same way twice. The pier man didn't appear. He didn't have to. Sometimes absence is proof something worked. Then came the thing no decree can fix, time. The board's second meeting ran long and tired. The numbers were good enough to dull edges. A staffer said, we're trending like that was a destination. The phone slipped one afternoon and people waited 13 minutes that felt like 13 months. The portal timer rolled past. A date, and nobody noticed until a binder thumped a desk hard enough to wake it. I felt the old heat rise, driver's seat eager. I buckled it in the back. I went for a run. End of the block. Back. Then a second block because fatigue argues with distance and distance doesn't talk back. Back at the wall, I added a line under votes, renewal. Habits need calendars. We wrote one for the board. Every quarter, random audits. Every month, metrics posted. Every meeting, public comment first. Every week, 1 hour in the lobby with a folding table for whoever gets lost in the portal and needs a human instead. The board voted yes. Routine is a revolution when the machine counts on drift. The smear crowd tried a nostalgia play. The old director understood scale. Someone wrote under a photo of a ribbon cutting with smiles like cutlery. I didn't reply. The mother with the cane did. Scale is how long I sat in your lobby, she wrote. We changed the size of the room. It got more likes than the smear, and a few from people who used to work in the building and now stood outside to breathe. I got a message from a number with a Detroit area code, a photo of a church basement, tables, printers, coffee urns, a poster with votes written in thick marker. Week 1, the caption said. A minute later, Fresno, then Tulsa. Then someplace with palm trees I couldn't name by the skyline. The binders looked different everywhere and exactly the same. The state deputy secretary asked me to present at a conference where people wear name badges and ask questions that sound like statements. I said yes on one condition: no stage, just a table and a printer and a live portal. They said, all right, skeptical. I showed up with the girl with purple hair and the veteran and the mother with the cane. We didn't say best practices, we said watch. We filed a public records request in front of a room full of suits and then passed the mic to a woman in the third row who said she had never asked for her own file because the word request felt like begging. She cried mid-sentence. We stood close. The suits clapped like they meant it. One of them asked me to consult. I said, build a clinic instead. At home, I practiced the sixth note. It still didn't fit. I let it not fit. Growth is uncool like that. One night, the bodega kid held the door with a flourish, like a doorman at a fancy hotel. You're famous, he said. My teacher showed your video in class. I asked him what he learned. He said, that processed should mean something. He grinned. And how to argue good. Argue well, I said. He rolled his eyes. You're turning into a teacher. Only on Wednesdays, I said. The next audit found a rot I hadn't noticed. Not because it hid, because it looked normal. A harmless step added to an internal checklist that forced a 2-week delay between a successful appeal and the actual restoration of benefits. No reason. Just a speed bump made of paper. Death by 1,000 pauses. We posted the step. We underlined it. We wrote, if you hear pending reinstatement where you say, per the decree, restoration is immediate. The girls at the clinic practiced the line until it didn't feel rude. The next month's metrics dropped. The delay line went to 0 like a fever breaking. The consultancy published a white paper titled From Attrition to Trust and quoted our decree like it was their idea. I printed the PDF and wrote in the margin, congratulations on discovering gravity. Then I used their bibliography to order 2 books from the library because thieves sometimes read good things on accident. The interim visited the clinic without a press release. She wore sneakers and helped fix a jammed printer. She took notes on a legal pad. When someone told her their coach wouldn't return calls, she dialed the number herself and handed over the phone and said, I'll wait. I watched respect land in the room like a slow bird finally choosing a branch. Later, she pulled me aside. The board wants you to consider a paid role, she said. I already have a role, I said. It's on Wednesdays with a stapler. You could do both. I could, I said, and felt the hunger in the offer, the good kind, the kind that wants to make you stay. But then the next you comes along and they'll say, join us instead of move us. I'd rather be the person who makes that a harder sentence to say, she nodded. Thank you for being inconvenient. Thank you for picking up the phone, I said. The pier, when I finally walked there again, was the same stage with the same light cone and the same water deciding whether it wanted to bite. I stood where I'd stood and thought about my brother, about the folder under his jacket and the stairwell and the cheap keyboard on my table, about the letter with 3 sentences that started this whole thing, about the hands that helped and the hands that pushed and the hands that held binders like shields. About the wolf looking over its shoulder not to see who followed, but to make sure we were still moving. I whispered, I didn't beg for fairness, just to hear the wind argue and lose. Then I whispered, I didn't let rage drive, and felt it settle kindly in the back seat where fuel belongs. At home, the wall had more white space, not empty, resting. Votes stayed, renewal stayed. The sticky note with one small joy stayed, and I'd started filling it with things that would embarrass my younger self. A neighbor's banana bread, a brand new box of cheap pens, the sound a three-hole punch makes when it aligns just right, the sixth note almost fitting on a Tuesday. The oversight board's first truly hard vote came on a rainy night that made umbrellas argue with the wind. The city asked to push a deadline because capacity. The board asked 3 questions anyone can carry: how long, why, what protects people while you fix it. The answers sank under their own weight. The board voted no. The room didn't cheer. It breathed. After, the mother with the cane and the veteran and the pastor and the girl with purple hair didn't go for drinks. They went to the clinic and sat with a woman whose timer had just ticked past her date, and they filed the escalation together. That's the victory photo they don't print. When I finally slept, the stairs in my dream led outside again. Same street, same light, new weather. The door didn't swing open, it creaked because wood is honest. I stepped through anyway. Morning, bed, run, eggs, spinach, keyboard, 5 notes. The 6th slipped, then caught, then held. I didn't clap. I smiled, small, real, like a person who made a doc and trusted it enough to step. Detroit sent a photo of a newspaper clipping. Fresno sent a clip of a kid reading a policy line out loud to a caseworker who blinked like he didn't know words could do that. Tulsa sent a joke, a stapler painted gold. I laughed at my counter and texted back a picture of our jammed printer with a Post-it that said, "I'm trying," taped to its face. We weren't done. We would never be done. Systems have a half-life. Habits have to be fed. People forget. Buildings grow tired. New suits arrive with new jargon-shaped knives. But now we had clocks and scripts and chairs and votes. We had a library that smelled like toner and stubbornness. We had a church that turned into a workshop on Wednesdays. We had a board that knew the difference between progress and posture. We had a map that worked in other cities because it was written in human. And I had this life that started at a pier with a letter and built a machine too soft to admire and too strong to break. I had grief that learned to lift. I had rage buckled where it belonged. I had a brother who stayed in the room without being in the room. I had a city that finally looked me in the eye. When people ask me how to start, I don't hand them a speech. I hand them a list. Make your bed, touch grass, eat, run to the stop sign, breathe, 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. Write 10 sentences. Learn the word policy. Learn to say, "Please put that in writing." Bring a buddy. Show up on Wednesdays. We have chairs. If they want revenge, I say, good, forge it, melt it down, pour it into rules. Watch how it hardens into something that can hold weight. Make it boring. Make it public. Make it permanent. Then teach it to someone who thinks they're alone and prove they aren't. I used to think the world ran on luck. Now I know it runs on people who refuse to be steered and learn to steer. Now I know it runs on clocks that count down in public and voices that land clean and binders that open fast and votes that actually do something when you lift your hand. Now I know it runs on habits. And we made ours.